Now that we've set up workers' compensation, let's put it to work for us. First, I'd like to take us through the process of showing how we select it on a paycheck, the reports that we can use, and how we can pay it. Afterwards, I'll go back and talk about how do we edit the employee account and how do we edit a workers' compensation code. To start, let's do a paycheck. I've set up workers' compensation and I'm ready to pay an employee. I'm going to choose to go up to Employees, Pay Employees for this process. I'm going to select Vicki, and in order to show you what will happen with workers' compensation, I'm going to open our detail. Here you will notice that I will have a brand new category at the end of my company summary and in my earnings area. You'll notice for every item I now have a corresponding workers' compensation code, and on the bottom of the screen in summary I now have a rolling amount of what is due for this employee on workers' compensation. Here, once I turn my hours, I will actually see that the workers' compensation number will calculate automatically. The beauty of QuickBooks also is that if I have two different categories, it'll calculate it for me also. Let's say, for instance, that Vicki has done some clerical work, but Vicki is also working as an outside sales rep, and that sales rep is actually a different code. I can now change her item and change her appropriate workers' compensation code. Here, I'll say that Vicki is going to be paid $20 an hour and she's worked 20 hours on the sales side. Once again, workers' compensation has calculated accordingly. I'm finished with Vicki's paycheck. I'll save and close. Back to my payroll screen and I will continue. I've reviewed my paychecks. They look good. I'm going to create them, and now I'm ready to close out of the payroll screens. QuickBooks has a variety of workers' compensation reports under the payroll system that'll allow us to track all the information that we've just put in. You'll notice I have a workers' comp summary, a comp by code, comp by job. Let's start by looking at the summary. Here you'll notice that there is no workers' compensation code for the majority of my wages. But let's change our date. Let's go to the end of December, and once we do, you'll notice our clerical and outside sales now appear. What's important to keep in mind is that when you turn on workers' comp, it's from this point forward. That means any prior paychecks would have to be changed individually in order to be part of the workers' compensation rollover number. That can be a little time consuming. As a result, we usually recommend start workers' compensation at the beginning of a quarter. Most of our reports are quarterly. If you start at the beginning of a quarter, it ties in perfectly. Now, of course, it could be that you're using monthly, in which case, start your reports on a monthly basis. If we want a little bit more detail than what we have in the compensation report, we can go back to our report, back to payroll, and this time look at a more detailed report. Let's choose our code and employee. Here you'll notice that it breaks down each individual employee so I can see who's been correlating their numbers correctly. Once again, I'll go over to the end of December, and when I select, I can see my clerical, my outside sales, and the ones with no workers' compensation code. Of course, as usual, I can double click on any number and see all the individual paychecks. Here you will also see that my gross wages, my overtime, my worker comp wages, the hours, the rate, the premium, all the information is right here for me to go through. So how do we actually pay our insurance premium now that we know it's calculated? We're going to treat it just like a liability. That means if I go up to employees, I'm going to choose to go into our custom payments for this one. When I go to custom payments, I'm going to change that date one more time to reflect the end of the year and say OK. Right on the top you'll notice there's my workers' compensation payment to be made. All the guesswork's taken out of workers' compensation with using this feature in QuickBooks. Now what about those changes we talked about earlier? How do I set up the employee? What if a code changes? Well, the first thing I'll do is go to the Employee Center. In the Employee Center, let's say that Vicki's code changed because she was promoted from clerical to outside sales. I would simply right-click on Vicki, go to Edit Employee. On top under Change Tabs, I'll just go to workers' compensation. It's that easy to change the code for Vicki. If I'd like to add new codes or change information in a code, here I'll go to Lists, and you'll notice there's a workers' compensation list. In this list, each of my current codes are established. It's very easy. If I'd like to add a new one, I'll go to the bottom and simply select New. However, you may find from time to time you're actually editing a code. The most common reason to edit a code is because of rate changes. Let's say, for instance, that I know I will have a rate change as of May 5th. This allows me to actually go in, change my date to start with the new rate automatically. Takes all the guesswork out. The day I get all that paperwork in for those rate changes, I can go in, type in those rate changes, and not worry about it. QuickBooks will automatically remember to start the new rate on the day I select. It is worth considering the enhanced payroll feature for workers' compensation in QuickBooks. Remember, along with workers' compensation, you'll also have your state forms. This is valuable within any accounting system. It's really time saving to have all your forms and reports done automatically for you.